All right, welcome back to another installment of the Wide Right Podcast. I'm Manny Navarro, Miami Hurricanes beat writer for The Athletic. Today, I'm joined by Scott Watkins of the Biloxi Sun Herald. Easy for me to say, Scott. You cover Southern Miss. Miami plays Southern Miss this week, so I appreciate you joining me here to preview the game. I know you were telling me off air here a couple minutes before this is your first year on the beat, but you've covered plenty of college football. Did that at Troy, where you went to school. Let me just ask you, first impressions of Will Hall and this program at Southern Miss.
Yeah, so first impressions, Will Hall right away, I have to say, very media friendly guy. That's like the first thing that I look for always. It's very media friendly. Great quote. You will never get any coach speak from him. But it's hard to get a true, first impression of what Will Hall has done with the program, especially on the field. He inherited a very rough situation. The roster was, I mean, it was almost barren a year ago, and I don't know if any Miami fans are familiar with what happened at Southern Miss as far as the quarterback position last year. They used, I think, right at 15 different players
Wow.
behind center. So it was a really really rough situation. And this year it was kind of supposed to be this, putting it all behind them. They added 35 players, I think, a lot of transfers, a lot of JUCOs, a lot of high school kids. They built this thing all the way back up. And very first half, first game, starting quarterback gets hurt again. And so almost like the nightmares of last year kind of coming right back. So it's really hard to get a read on what Will Hall is and what Will Hall's offense is, because they have yet to this day still not had an opportunity to truly run what they want to run.
Yeah, they lost a tough one, I think quadruple overtime, right? 29-27 in the opener at home to Liberty. And Hugh Freeze has done a good job with that Liberty program, but he lost a lot of guys off that squad. And I think Southern Miss was favored to win that game, weren't they?
I think it was Liberty, but very, very close.
Very
I
tight
think it was
margin.
1 point, maybe 1.5, maybe. I think.
Yeah. Southern Miss left Conference USA. They're in the Sun Belt now, the new expanded and better Sun Belt, I would say, 14-team conference. I think it's probably going to be one of the best G5 leagues. This roster is mostly made up of Mississippi players, I think 77% of the roster. But they do have a very familiar name for Miami fans, and that's Frank Gore Jr. Of course, his father, number 3 all-time leading rusher in NFL history, played at Miami, had two. I covered his dad. I'm 44 years old. You're a young guy breaking into this business, Scott, but I remember covering his dad. So it makes me feel extra old knowing Frank Gore Jr. is coming to town this week to play the Hurricanes. But he's an excellent player, and he didn't get recruited by a whole lot of schools because he was size. I think he was about 5'8" coming out of high school. But he's perfect for this system and the super back. Can you talk a little about Frank and just, I'm sure you've talked to him a few times. What's your thought on him?
Yeah, Frank Gore he's very versatile. That's why they use him as the super back. That was something that popped up the UTSA game last year, third to last game of the season. They were done using the fifth or sixth quarterback that they were on. So they came up with the super back, which is just a wildcat formation. They put Frank Gore back there, Frank Gore Jr., and did a really good job. He's actually surprisingly good passer, and that's what makes the formation so good. Is that they're not looking for little pop passes here and there. They will throw it deep with Frank Gore Jr., and he's had a lot of success with that. So he's a very versatile, very good runner, really hard nosed runner. Does not, when you watch him run, it's almost like size is just not a factor. He will run through, he will run around. It doesn't matter with him. Super talented guy, and very clearly the center of the Southern Miss cultural rebuild for sure.
Yeah, I was looking at the passing numbers from last week. I guess he was 1 of 4 for 48 yards, only 5 completions overall. I mean, with a healthy quarterback, is this a more balanced offense, or did we see the run pass ratio probably about what it will be in this game?
This was not balanced. They ran the ball on 75% of plays, and most of that was second half. The starting quarterback went down late second quarter, and they brought in the backup for one play. He threw an interception, and that's when they went with Superback the entire second half. And they attempted 4 passes the entire second half, entered overtime. That was it. So and this week they're going to go with a true freshman quarterback and the Superback. It's going to be a mix. It's going to be a mix of those two things. For somebody who's never played an FBS football game and the Superback formation, it'll be fun. I do expect the ratio to be close to 70% run this week.
Okay. Tell me a little about the receivers, Jason Brownlee, Brandon Hayes. They got a tight end, Cole Cavallo, and a slot back. Who are some of the other skill guys outside of Frank Gore, and what are some of the things they can do?
Yeah, so Southern Miss actually has a pretty surprisingly deep group of wide receivers that they just unfortunately have not had the opportunity to use and really, put out there. Brandon Hayes is a redshirt freshman. I think he's a third-year freshman, actually. Really, really talented deep ball guy. Unfortunately, on Wednesday, yesterday, he got hurt in practice, and it doesn't look like he's going to play on Saturday. But they do have guys. I mean, they have Zay Franks. They have a guy named Latrell Jones, who was the #1 junior college wide receiver in America last year. And he's new to the team this year. And so they have wide receivers. It's about getting the ball into their hands. They have not really gotten a lot of opportunities. Last year was Jason Brownlee. He, in my opinion, is a Power 5 guy. He's got an excellent catch radius, made a phenomenal grab in double, triple coverage last week. They just have a hard time getting him the ball because, the quarterback situation that's been ongoing. But they have guys, and they have guys that they'll use.
Some size on the offensive line. I'm sitting here looking at the guys listed as the starters, and Takeem Doss, 6'5", 373-pound senior. I've seen some big guys. I think Navon Donaldson from Miami last year was probably closer to 400 pounds than he was 350. Is Doss really 373, or is he bigger than that?
Hard to tell. When you get up to that big, it's hard to really put a number on it. But yeah, no, dude is huge. The offensive line as a whole is really big. It's a lot deeper than a year ago. Last year, this was the worst offensive line in the country, and had a good start. Did really well. Did not give up a sack in the first half when Southern Miss had a quarterback out there, and did well blocking for Gore Jr. They're huge. And the biggest difference is that the backups now, the average is over 300 pounds. Last year was like 280. So they're a lot bigger and a lot deeper than a year ago.
Yeah, some of the other guys, Jaquan Scott at left guard, Bryson Mays at center, John Bolding, right guard, all of them, like you said, over 300 pounds, 339 for Scott, 317 for Mays, and 329 for Bolding. And then Paul Gaynor Jr. is the right tackle. He's 6'3", 290. So a lot of size, a lot of mass up there. Curious how good they are at moving the line of scrimmage. And Liberty was a fairly decent test.
Yeah, Liberty was a decent test. It's going to be obviously very different this week. And this is going to be kind of the first big test for that offensive line. And that's the other question mark with this team coming into the season, is that you knew the defense was going to be really good. Special teams a little shaky, but offensively, you got Frank Gore Jr., you got Jason Brownlee. You just need a quarterback and an offensive line that can block. And right now, the offensive line looks a lot better. It looked really good against Liberty, but we'll see going forward how it plays out.
I was looking at, the fact that Southern Miss, I mean, look, obviously they produced Brett Favre. They've had so many guys make it to the NFL. It doesn't seem like these guys are scared at all, right? Like you'd think, oh, maybe you'd have a group of 5 school. They got to play a tough, their schedule in the future. I mean, they got Florida State next year, Mississippi State. They got Ohio State on the schedule, Auburn. And I mean, this is a team that probably year in and year out is probably pretty well battle tested and not afraid to go on the road and play a Power 5 school.
No, this is another Sun Belt team with a pretty long tradition of taking down Power 5 teams. I mean, when I was at Troy, that's kind of the same case. A team that beat Nebraska and Mississippi State and LSU and all that stuff. It's the same thing as Southern Miss. The most recent game that comes to mind is Kentucky a while back, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. They were down like 20, 24 points in that game, came back and won. They're not worried. I mean, in post game, what really impressed me in post game after Liberty, after a 4 overtime loss, especially when Frank Gore Jr. took the stand, dude was ready to play again. I mean, he was smiling. He was excited about Miami. He looked like that. Like Ted Lasso says, you got to be a goldfish. He looked like a goldfish. I mean, he was ready to move on and play this next game. So this team, I think they're very excited. I think the fact that it's a little JUCO heavy also kind of plays a factor in that, because you have a lot of guys that were either recruited originally by Power 5 teams or maybe started their career at Power 5 teams. They kind of have something to prove. So it is a big game, and I don't think that the big result will have any bearing on the mindset of this team.
I was curious, what did Frank Gore Jr. say this week? I mean, this is an opportunity to come back home and kind of stick it to the home team. Didn't really recruit him.
I was not able to head to the practice this week with high school stuff, but I know that he's excited. I've kind of seen some of the quotes. I can't remember off the top of my head. He's still to be down there. This is not his coming home, I guess, because the team has played Florida International on the road before. So he's played college football in his home environment before.
Okay. Um, let's flip over to defense. Youngest defensive coordinator in the FBS here, Austin Armstrong, 29 years old, came over from Louisiana Lafayette, where he was the linebackers coach. So, I mean, young, but from everything Mario Cristobal described, really aggressive with his play calling, a lot of blitzing, a lot of aggressiveness. How would you sort of describe Armstrong and what they do?
They are aggressive and they use a lot of different tactics. There's not really one guy that they lean on at a star position basically. When you look at the stats and especially if you're just searching through the box scores, nobody's really going to stand out in this defense, especially last year. I mean, after one game, I think Malik Shorts did have a really good game Saturday, the safety, 12 tackles. But yeah, the safeties will come down and play at the line of scrimmage. They'll also get really aggressive in the secondary as far as their pass coverage. They forced 3 turnovers last week, which was pretty good. But yeah, this team, they're solid. They have a strong front seven. The defensive line is largely brand new. It's made up of mostly Power 5 transfers and JUCO guys, but they looked really good against Liberty. The linebackers are deep. They lost the guy for the season just before the year started, and they had 2 starting caliber players just ready to fill in. They're a very deep group up front. I think Liberty had in total 11 first downs for the first 3 quarters against Southern Miss, and that's when Hugh Freeze went to quarterback number 3, was a dual threat guy, and he kind of broke contain repeatedly. And I think, if my memory serves correctly, they doubled up on first downs in the 4th quarter alone, 11 firsts. So that was the moment where things broke down for this defense. But before then, it was shut down.
Yeah, Miami had a lot of success running the football last week against Bethune-Cookman. And everybody can just kind of shrug their shoulders at that, right? And say, well, it's an FCS team, they're supposed to. But, Mario Cristobal is very, obviously he's a former offensive line coach, former offensive lineman. It's something that matters to him. And really, I mean, the job he and Alex Marable have done, it to me anyway, transforming that Miami offensive line. I mean, I was really impressed with those guys. They did a really good job. They've got some size to them. But you can't, like you said, you can't take the Southern Miss team just for granted to say, hey, Miami's going to go around and start pushing them around. I know they got the nickname the Nasty Bunch. And so Miami fans can start familiarizing themselves with that a little bit. Talk about their defensive front a little bit. These guys, Christian Booth, Rodarius Lewis, Josh Ratcliffe, Armandus Cooley, Avery Habis, what they do. It's basically a 4-3 front, but what do they do?
It feels like a 4-3 front. I think it's really more like a 3-4 with Habis kind of coming off the edge a little bit there. But right, yeah, the defensive line is they rotate a lot of guys. It's a lot of second chance guys. You've got players from Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Arkansas kind of filling in there. And they run deep. I remember when you mentioned Booth, he came up with a big play against Liberty. He's like a 3rd string defensive end, but he's good enough to where Will Hall and Austin Armstrong believes he can come in and make an impact, and he did. And so I think that kind of speaks to just how much, just how well they've done, retooling that front after losing, I think, 2 starters off the defensive line last year. It doesn't feel worse. It feels better. Yeah. Like I said before, the front seven is just really, really deep this year.
Just to mention a couple of other guys that's in the top of their depth chart here, Dalen Gill, middle linebacker, and Swayze Bozeman. Both of them are seniors, so they're experienced guys, 5'11", 225, and 6'3", 224. The star position, they've got, a small guy, and Tylen Knight is 5'7", 175. Interesting. How good is Tylen and how effective is he?
The coaches love Tylen Knight. He is a brand new transfer from one of the Mississippi schools. He immediately pushed for the starting job at his position. Cam Harrell had that spot last year, and Cam Harrell's very good, and he had a good game against Liberty. Tylen Knight came in and just immediately impressed. It's only been 1 week. I would expect Knight's name to be called quite a bit going forward. He's not even popping up on the box score here. He may not have even had a tackle, but he's somebody the coaches expect to have a big impact both on special teams and on defense. He's a very versatile guy. I think he actually started his career running back, but he just likes to hit, and hit he does.
You mentioned Malik Shorts at safety having the 12 tackles. What about their corners? Eric Scott, 6'2", 202 senior. Natron Brooks, 5'11", 168-pound redshirt junior. Seems like 2 older guys. Miami's receivers, really, I mean, outside of Xavier Restrepo, you don't have many guys that are very productive at that position. That's kind of the one big question mark for Miami coming into this game. I'm curious, how good is that secondary?
Natron Brooks is one of the better cornerbacks in the Sun Belt. He was one of the better corners in Conference USA last year. And the scary thing is that Eric Scott Jr. might be better. It didn't really show up on the numbers last year because nobody threw his way. And Liberty finally threw his way, and he picked it off and took it to the house. So they have two very, very good corners. They also have one of the top JUCO corners in the country from last year that they've added to the roster, Michael Caraway. So they're very good on the outside. In my opinion, they have a top 2 safety combo in the Sun Belt as well. If the front 7 is not the strength, I mean, it's the secondary. They're very good back there.
Pro Football Focus marked them, I think, for 14 missed tackles in the opener. Was that an issue at all? I mean, they're an aggressive defense. You're going to put guys in one-on-one type situations in the open field. When you think back to that opener, was that a problem? Was tackling an issue and all, or was it just maybe a couple plays?
I think where it popped up was the fourth quarter when Caden Salter came in to play quarterback for Liberty, and that was just something that Southern Miss did not adjust to. He had a big impact on the ground. It seemed like he thought about, maybe went through one of his progressions and then he just kind of ran for it. That was an issue. He was very elusive in the open field. He was tough to bring down. If I don't have access to those numbers, but if I had to guess, half of those missed tackles probably came in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, 24 pressures in the game, which is actually pretty good for Mississippi Southern Miss. 5 for Dalen Gill, 5 for Dominic Quayon, I guess is the way you pronounce it. Yeah. I mean, and really not a ton of sacks. I only had 2, but the way the pressure affects other teams, I'm sure. I mean, that's kind of what they try to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. They just want to make the quarterback uncomfortable. They're fine with giving up a 4, 5, 6 yard rush here and there if they can force the quarterback to make a lot of bad reads. Because I think the way that they kind of approach the defense is they want to eliminate the pass game, basically. I know teams want to establish the run, but Southern Miss kind of reverse engineers that a little bit. They want to take away the pass game with shutdown corner play and aggressive getting after the quarterback. That way they can tighten up the box a little bit and focus in, lock in on the run game. You take one away and then take the other, and that's kind of the Austin Armstrong game plan.
Okay. Special teams got a redshirt kicker who's got plenty of experience. He's got a career-long 53-yard attempt. I think 2 of 3 on field goals the other night, and 24 of 35 all time on his field goals, according to the notes here that I got in front of me. He's got 95 touchbacks, so he's got a pretty strong leg. Just curious how what you think of Briggs Bourgeau.
Yeah, I think it's Bourgeois, maybe.
Bourgeois, my fault.
We all had a hard time. With it. Yeah, it was funny because he is not somebody that fans are. They don't really look forward to seeing him on the field. He's one of those kickers. But he came through, and we were sitting there in the press box. It was overtime, second overtime maybe. Liberty had just hit a field goal, and they needed him to come out and hit a 53-yard field goal, which would have been a career long, and he hit it. To the surprise of everybody up in the box, he hit that field goal. So and it came the possession after he missed the field goal, because that's how the first overtime went. He came out, missed a short field goal, then Liberty came out and missed a short field goal, and the game continued. He's up and down. He's working on that stability. He definitely does not lack leg power. That is for sure. He's just working on, the consistency of putting it to the uprights.
53, some good range. So, I mean, he may not be accurate every time, but that's got to concern you a little bit if the game's on the line here. I know Miami's a 25, 26-point favorite, but if Southern Miss, like you said, they're playing the role of David and Goliath in this game, that's something to concern Miami fans. Punter is a redshirt senior, Mason Smith. I saw he was a Ray Guy Award watch list in the preseason. I think he had, from what I'm reading here, 43.6 average. I think it was last year from what I'm reading. But it's a pretty good average and a couple inside the 20, etc. They also got a kick returner in Cameron Harrell, who was all Sun Belt, I guess, preseason. So special teams is something they're pretty good at, huh?
Yeah, Mason, I think it's Mason Hunt. He definitely a very good punter. affected the Liberty game in a big way. I know when I was doing some research that Miami had like an average starting field position at the 46-yard line
Yeah,
Saturday.
kickoff returns by Keyshawn Smith, 3 of them.
But yeah, and that will help you out. That's one way to score 70 points in less than 70 plays. But yeah, Mason Hunt, he has the ability to change the game. He had a 51-yard punt down at the 3-yard line on Saturday. So he has the leg, he has the accuracy, and field position to me is going to play a huge factor on Saturday. And I think that if Southern Miss can get Miami in some long positions, putting them back at the 20-25 consistently, and you give that nasty bunch defense an opportunity to play with a lot of green behind them, I think that's kind of the key, along with, the superback eating up a lot of clock. I think that's the key to, Southern Miss playing spoiler.
Yeah. Shorten the game, play some good defense, and keep Tyler Van Dyke off the field, which, hey, listen, that was what Florida State kind of did to Miami when they beat them last year and had a successful drive late in the game to knock them off. So, listen, Scott, I appreciate you coming in. What's your prediction for the game? Are you flying in for the game and everything?
I will not be. I've got high school on Friday night, so I will be
Okay.
watching from the comfort of my house.
All right, nothing wrong with that. I wish I could do that every single week, but I will be at the stadium. I've been doing this too long, Scott. It's what happens when you get old like I do. But what's your prediction for the game?
I do not think Miami scores 70 points in this game. I do not think Southern Miss scores 27. I think that Miami wins it, let's say 31-17.
31-17. So they'll cover the spread. I mean, I would probably guess this will be a tighter game than most expect. Southern Miss, as you said, a lot of JUCO guys trying to get some good NFL tape. This is the kind of game to do it. So I would assume that they'll be highly excited. Frank Gore will be highly motivated. I agree with you. I think it'll be less than the 25-26 point margin, but I do think Miami will win. So, Scott, it was fun, man. Thanks for coming on and previewing this game for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right.